So welcome everybody. This is the first in our series of best practices for intent-based networking. I'm Anton Goldman. I lead the wireless and DNA business for Cisco from a sales perspective across Asia, Pacific, Japan, and China. And I'm delighted to be joined by Pete Stoikovsky. And Peter is the lead partner for network and security with one of our key strategic partners being Deloitte. And I'm going to jump straight into my first question because I'm really eager to get going. So, Peter, tell me, how has Deloitte evolved as an IT partner of Cisco as we've totally transformed our business in the direction of intent-based networking? You know, what skill sets have had to change? How have you needed to reframe and reorganize your whole practice?
Yeah, it's really interesting, Anton. It's I guess the network landscape itself has just changed so dramatically. I guess architecturally, when you look at things, the change in the network is probably the biggest shift that I've definitely seen over the last 20 or 30 years of the industry. But the concept of software-defined networking or business-driven, it's rapidly changed the networking landscape as we know it. And I guess for me, the exciting part is that network engineers can finally come to the forefront of technology with programmable networks. So really, really exciting times. From a Deloitte perspective, we're known probably for the advisory and the business consultancy aspects of our business. So we're used to working with CIOs, CEOs, CFOs, and transforming an organisation. But we ourselves identified I guess a lack in some of our capabilities around the implementation aspects of the engineering, especially around networking. And about 5 years ago, began to invest in building out that function of our business. So our investment was focused on software-orientated organisations, on-premise and both cloud-based, boutique-type engineering firms that could implement technology solutions, and that of course included the network space. So we've evolved through augmenting our organic side of the business and that growth organically through the consulting, the traditional consulting, the businesses that we do, with the inorganic growth through acquisitions of software-orientated type organisations with deep domain expertise, and in turn bridging that gap that we'd identified between, I guess, the business and the actual implementation side. So when it comes to IBN, we're positioned to combine that business expertise and the engineering capability to help our clients adapt and meet their business objectives. And Anton, on I guess a similar sort of note, I'm kind of curious from my perspective with, we spoke about Deloitte having evolved with that tech change and having adapted, but what about from your perspective? Have Cisco, they've clearly evolved, how they evolved, and what's changed in your world?
So we've gone through a massive transformation. I mean, particularly if I look back over the last 3 years, we've totally changed the way that customers consume our technology, you know, looking at more of a subscription type modeling and really moving our business much more towards software and less focused purely on hardware platforms. But even that said, the Catalyst 9000 series, from a switching perspective, has actually been the fastest ramping product in Cisco's history. So it's totally changed our business. It's changed our go-to-market, and really we've introduced so much innovation. I mean, if we just look at DNA Center as sort of the single pane of glass, that's been dramatic innovation in terms of what it's brought to our business. But we've very much listened to our customers, and we've needed to evolve our business to meet their requirements and drive towards the levels of simplicity that they're looking to achieve with Cisco. They're looking at operational efficiencies, they're looking at cost efficiencies, and we've had to really adjust our technology delivery models to achieve these end goals. And what about yourself? I mean, take me through your intent-based networking journey with Cisco. You know, where did it all start? And versus, I suppose, what are your customers doing today? I mean, you've seen an evolution. So you know, take me through some of that.
Yeah, we definitely have, Anton. I'd describe it as quite a unique journey, if I can put it that way. If I think of IBN, it's really the ability for the network to adjust dynamically to business needs, no matter, I guess, where the application or the user is. And to break that down further, I've always thought about it in two major components. So the first one being around the actual business. What is the business logic behind policy change, or what is important to the industry in that sector, and the company that we're working with? And the second part being the deep domain expertise. So how do we augment, I guess, those business requirements into solutions that can be deployed? And more importantly, how do you run and optimize the solution once it's in place? So from our perspective, we could always apply, I guess, the business lens with everything that we did around our advisory and consulting. But funny enough, our journey began from the bottom up, really. Our investment in software-defined engineering firms, or specifically acquiring Cisco partners with that deep domain expertise, then working that back into our existing consulting business. So over time, we really learned how to closely integrate the business components and the deep domain expertise into one, effectively go to market with our clients. So from the perspective of the customer journey, we actually started in the early days with a really broad mix of technology strategy or organizational strategy, developing technology business cases, but even implementing ACI solutions as an example, or Cisco I solutions. So we then learned over time how to create the end-to-end journey by connecting all of the dots together. So today we still do all of that, but I'd say in a much more structured and approachable manner. But to maximise the business value out of IBN, it really does need to have the right team and in place that can run it, and needs to operate without the limitations of traditional type change management processes. So I'd say the latest part of our evolution in that space and that journey, especially with clients, has been over the last 2 or so years, where we've added to our IBN journey, and that's to develop SDN or IBN-based operating models. So IBN operating models, which can then provide our clients with the ability to operate their IBN in the new world of DevOps and DevNet, and even in most cases, multi-carrier landscapes. And so I guess if we stick to that whole customer journey concept, what problems are customers trying to solve that's driving them to this new approach that you spoke of?
So Pete, there are a couple of big ticket items that I'm seeing across our customer base, and meetings that I'm pulled into. I think there's an overarching need to drive towards automation, to drive towards simplicity, to kind of remove as much human error or fat finger error as possible, and really also to get an understanding of how networks are actually functioning. Are they performing optimally? And if they're not, how do we actually correct the situation? How do we fault find? How do we have that visibility of where the issues lie? And then really the nirvana state, or the North Star, is actually to have that network self-optimize and self-correct. And what I mean by that is actually have the network log a TAC case, or have a network manage an RMA case without needing human intervention. That is really giving us the ability to deploy our human capital and all our really smart IT people and smart IT resources in ways that can dramatically add value and transform the organization. And what I mean by that is, our big ticket use cases are things such as software-defined access. We've got a plethora of devices and things now hitting our network, looking for network resources. And we've also got people across the organization going dramatically mobile. And what that's doing is it's exposing organizations from a risk and compliance perspective. We have to ensure that we can segment our networks and that users only have access to the appropriate resources and data that they should, and through their devices, etc. And having that consistent profile that can move throughout an organization, whether it be locally, regionally, or even globally. This is becoming paramount. How do we do this in a simple fashion? How do we do it uniformly? and that's where software-defined access is coming into its own. The other areas that I would focus on would be things such as automation. How do we easily deploy networks? Where we move into things such as plug and play, or how do we actually reduce the friction in terms of even maintaining a network? Can we automate some of that process? And we look at things such as software image management and that sort of thing to create the standardized platform and the standardized way of management. So yes, I think our customers are driving towards leveraging things such as AI and ML through the network to drive that intelligence out and to free up resources to deploy them smartly elsewhere.
Yeah, excellent, Anton. And I guess a lot of the components that you spoke to there obviously come back to the intent-based network. And there's one thing that comes to mind is around who IBN is for. Would you describe it as being for everybody, or is it just big enterprises? Is there a particular vertical that is better suited to than another? Who would you say is IBN, I guess, for everyone?
So I'd actually suggest that IBN actually is for everybody. It just comes in different shapes and forms or different flavors. So, we see some of our more distributed or dispersed organizations, which are very branch centric. They are able to jump on the IBN bandwagon with technologies such as Cisco Meraki, and almost day two, they already have a fully fledged intent-based network set up for their organization. They can use things such as Meraki Health and Meraki Insight, and they're realizing some of this network potential right from the get-go. Versus maybe some of our more established infrastructure heavy, CPE, on-premise heavy customers that are looking more towards DNA center and more the Catalyst side of the house to solve some and simplify some of these complex challenges and these complex problems with some of their legacy business and legacy infrastructure, as well as obviously introducing new solutions. So really, it very much depends on where the customer is at in terms of technology maturity and technology road mapping, but also in terms of vertical specific. Some verticals are moving very, very quickly in this regard. So like healthcare with software-defined access. We look at higher education where just network availability and resources, with things such as assurance, that is a big ticket item. So really it does depend on the customer, it depends on their technology appetite, their size, their distribution, etc. So I'll bounce one back to you, and that's, a lot of our customers are always asking us, what makes partners or what makes organizations unique in terms of their value proposition. So I'd really like to pose that one of you. But pose that one to you, what does actually make Deloitte unique in terms of how you can bring this technology to life? And, just from your consulting heritage, how are you uniquely placed to assist these customers in a multitude of verticals?
Yeah, okay. So I'd tie this back to the business component of IBN. So one of those two aspects I spoke about earlier, but it's really the part of Deloitte that we feel that we're known for, and that's the business consulting. And by that I mean working with an organisation and redefining their technology landscape, but tightly coupling that to their business ambitions with industry context, and really showing them what is changing their industry or the world that impacts their business. So we do that through what you mentioned earlier, Anton, around the industry verticals. So it has taken a little while to structure it right, but over time, we've employed some of the best talent across the country in our consulting division, and they're ex-industries. So we've had them build practices around their level of expertise or their domain of expertise. And if I look at and consider health and sciences, we've got ex-doctors and scientists. If I look at our financial services industry, we've got former bankers. In education, previous CIOs from leading universities. And that's enabled us to understand the intimacies of the industries that we're dealing with. and then drive creative discussions with the technical experts that I mentioned earlier, and that ultimately leads to a great level of innovation. So one recent example that comes to mind, and it's around the health and science vertical. It's linked back to a business ambition, which was seamless, secure, and resilient access to electronic medical records, or EMR. So back to the importance of IBN we link that back to the importance of IBN for the connectivity, for the resilience and security. For the business case, the strategy that we developed, they were all linked to EMR, and the use cases that we spoke to and defined were all about nurses and doctors and their end devices and how they could quickly and securely access medical records while on the move. But if you look at the technology that we defined to help make that happen, it was all a combination of IBN type products that made that happen. So the combination of SD Access, Cisco ICE, and DNA Center were those things that were key to that solution. So if I look at our unique proposition, it's based on the fact that we've got industry experts that understand their domain, but we mash that up with our deep domain expertise as well.
Right. So, and in terms of engagement, because this comes up a lot, like what would the engagement model look like? You know, what is the process that Deloitte would take in terms of moving from that initial customer meet through to a workshop with various stakeholders, all the way through to sort of like deployment and then really ultimately kind of the crown jewels, which is being able to prove to the business that they've realized tremendous value through this new technology.
Yeah, and I'd say with this is probably a use case based type answer. So if we look at one of our most recent projects through the financial services vertical, so we had our consulting team very much from the business space that began a strategy around the branch of the future, and how our client could help or could better serve their clients. So what I personally found interesting during that piece was it included aspects of the human-centered interior design, the aesthetics, including consideration for wireless access aesthetics as an example. Ultimately, our client wants to provide a better engagement experience or an experience for their clients, whether it was through features on their mobile app or even experience with the actual branch. So when I look at our engagement model, from there what we did was we took all of those business insights and developed a network strategy for the client, and referenced a lot of that branch of the future work, but discussed how an IBN solution could meet their business requirements and how to, importantly in this part, how to transition to an IBN, so that migration process, the challenges, the risks, the timelines. The process also for us included design assistance and implementation assistance, so providing the engineering expertise to configure the actual infrastructure, design the infrastructure as well. But to complete that process, to complete the work with the client, we developed an IBN operating model. And I mentioned operating models earlier on, but in this instance, the client wanted to manage the IBN themselves and augment with third-party partners as and when required. So the operating model that we created defined how to operate an IBN with DevNet-based processes or DevOps-based processes. It defined the team size, team capability requirements, how to manage multiple carriers with an existing service desk, as well as the transition to such a model over time. And that last component, the operating model, it is key to the components when we start talking about BVR or the business value realization of an IBN. Without it, we do feel that our clients are left operating a network with, at times, legacy processes and capabilities, and they struggle, they can't maximize the full benefits of an IBN solution.
On the topic of business value realization, or as we like to term it, BVR, I know this is going to be a difficult one because I've grappled with it for a couple of years, but how do you quantify and even qualify real business value realization for your customers? Because surely it's got to differ from sort of customer to customer, vertical to vertical.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It's definitely a great question, and it can be a tricky one at times. But I think if I break this down, to understand business value realization is really to understand the original pain points of the organisation, the organisational challenges, their failures, their future ambitions, the future technology and how it supports the business. But core to that business value realization, we feel, is the operating model and how the business will take advantage of the IBN once it's actually integrated and functioning. So once deployed and the design's finished and the migration's complete, how do you run and optimize the IBN solution for your business? So BVR, for the most part, with the work that we do, is targeting operational efficiencies, how to activate a mobile phone feature faster than a competitor because of an API that's used to modify security policy. It's about an outage being dynamically avoided because of routing decisions that are split second and maybe take advantage of an alternative carrier. P1's being reduced because the network dynamically taking action, and because the IBN is actually architected in a way that it protects the business. So we quantify it through ultimately support tickets and reduction in support cases, as well as resolution times to resolve a fault, and really importantly, through components of the speed to market. So we look at moves, adds, changes, and deletes, or MACDs across a network. Look at how quickly can we make something happen using DevNet processes instead of legacy processes. And that's really key to realizing business value. And the final comment I'd make there really is just around the risk and compliance perspective. So the network is just so much more secure when it's consistent and has consistent deployment. Trying to retain consistency, especially across security policy, is difficult when the system's distributed. So when it's centralized through something like DNA Center, as an example, it's just far more secure than a legacy means of operating. And in that case, despite attackers constantly learning and adapting, we expect far less security incidents to occur because the IBN itself is also learning and adapting. So a whole range of different aspects there, Anton, in terms of how we measure that business value realization, but a lot of it comes back to that operating model in the end. And Anton, I guess the thing I wanted to leave the piece with was just around how customers, from your perspective, can actually go off and get started in this journey.
Yeah, Peter. So look, we find the best place to start is really to workshop what the most pressing challenges are for the customer. That's best done with various stakeholders in the customer, not just IT and not just network management, but across the business operationally, together with the strategic partner and as well as Cisco as required. And then to map out, what are the key use cases to drive towards? Are we looking at something such as assurance for the wireless or the wired or both of those networks? Are we looking to segment the network to try and improve the security posture and simplify things with software-defined access? Is this organization looking to deploy, multiple sites with ease? Do we need to look at automation to stand up these branch networks easily? So that is really the crux of getting going. And then based on that, we can then start to do things such as environment scans to understand what is the underlying infrastructure as it currently sits, or what is the current install base, and how would that potentially need to change. And then mapping out is, what does success look like? So what is business value realization specific to that customer? So I hope everybody on this webinar has got a lot out of our discussion today. I just wanted to really say thank you to Peter from Deloitte for coming along and being my guest. And please look out for future webinars in this series of best practices for intent-based networking. So have a great rest of your day, and thanks for jumping online.
Between what is hoped for and what can be, there's a bridge. Between the aspirations of a ball club and the greatest sports venue in America, there's a bridge. Between chaos and wonder, endangered and protected, there's a bridge. built on technology that can solve, create, heal, inspire, and secure. A bridge. There from the beginning to where we stand today, and where we will go from here. One company, one promise. If you can imagine it, we will build the bridge to get you there. Cisco. The bridge to possible.
The town I grew up in hasn't changed much since I was young. There just aren't many opportunities